Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to the Communities Housing and Environment Committee meeting on 12th of November 2019. I've been advised there'll be no fire alarms planned for this evening, but if the alarm does sound, Mrs Matthews will assess the situation and provide further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. I would remind you that this meeting is broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Borough Council website, but will anyone else be recording or filming the proceedings? Nothing from Councillor Mackay? Okay, thank you. I ask so that people at the meeting will know that this will be happening. Members who are using mobile phones or tablets are asked to please ensure that these are on silent and are only being used with regard to business on the agenda this evening. Before I go on to a little bit more, can I just remind members that we are in purdah period at the moment, so because of the election, so it is, just be careful, that's all I'm going to say. Yeah. All right, okay. Yeah. I won't say I've got yellow socks on, but carry on. Yeah. Okay, so the first item is apologies for absence, please.
Okay, we've received apologies from Councillors Matt Burton, Mrs Joy and Khadkar.
Thank you very much. Notification of substitute members, please. Okay.
Councillor Robertson for Councillor Khadkar.
Thank you.
Councillor Comanche for Councillor Joy.
Thank you very much. Oh, I beg your pardon, Councillor Perry.
No problem at all. Councillor Perry for Councillor Matt Burton.
Right, lovely. Thank you very much. Item 3, urgent items. I've agreed to take an urgent item for agenda item 17, the draft biodiversity strategy, which is a revised appendix 1, and you should all have a copy of the document in front of you. Has everybody got that? Yep. Lovely, that's the one. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I'm also proposing to change the order of business to accommodate Councillor Hinder, who would like to speak on agenda item 18, request for Village Green application for Weavering Heath. I would suggest that this is moved up to be dealt with after the question and answer session. So we've got notification of substitute members, please. Could you come to the microphone if you... Oh, sorry, visiting members. It's the shirt that's putting me off, Councillor Mackay.
Works every time, Mr Mortimer. Councillor Malcolm Mackay, Shepway South.
What item?
Item, please.
Other than to wear this shirt, I have no other reason to be here other than to support the question.
Support. That's fine. Thank you very much. Councillor Hinder.
Councillor Hinder, Boxley Ward. Item 18, I reserve the right to speak.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you. Agenda item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any? No, thank you. Disclosures of lobbying, item 6. Mrs Rose.
I think I think most councillors have been contacted by Maidstone residents in a matter of the RSPCA, thinking about regards to fireworks and the conditions of fireworks, and thank the Chair for allowing me to raise this at item 11. Thank you.
That's under the work programme. Thank you very much. Mr Rose. Councillor Rose.
Yeah, Councillor Rose, thanks. I've been lobbied on agenda item 12, if you're interested.
On 12, okay. Right, cheers. Okay, item 7, to consider whether any items should be taken in private because of possible disclosure of exempt information. We don't have any yellow pages this evening, so everything will be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you. And we go to the minutes on page 1 for the last meeting, please. I'll take them as they come. Page 1. Page 2. 3. And 4. Is that all agreed, members? Thank you. I'll sign those after the meeting. Thank you. There are no petitions for the public this evening. 10, we have a question and answer session, members of the public. We have a question tonight from Dee Bonnet. If you'd like to come to the chair, Dee, and then read your question out. You press the button in the middle to get the light on. That's super, thank you.
Councillor Mortimer, would you consider changing the clause in the PET policy for temporary accommodation as it stands currently to enable those who are residing in temporary accommodation to continue to do so with their pets until permanent accommodation is found? The clause in the PET policy for temporary accommodation states currently, whilst under this policy you've been permitted to home your pets with you in temporary accommodation, you may be offered accommodation to end the council's housing duty to you where the landlord is a housing association or private landlord. The housing provider is likely to have their own policy as to whether pets are permitted in their accommodation, and the council does not have the authority to overrule their decision. In normal circumstances, if you were to be offered accommodation where pets are not permitted, the offer of accommodation would not be considered as an unsuitable offer on the basis that you could not have your pets join you in permanent accommodation from the temporary.
Yes, yeah, thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much for coming along. We met last year when we did the original policy, and we met Mr. Littlemore, and I thank you for your keen, your question, and hopefully we can move forward with this one way or the other. I'm going to refer you to Mr. Littlemore, and he'll know the background policy on this.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your question, and I appreciate the depth of feeling you have about this issue and the background to it, which is why we were keen to introduce the policy for temporary accommodation. We have reviewed the last 6 months' lettings in relation to this. It's interesting to note that during that period we didn't have any refusals from applicants leaving temporary accommodation on the basis that they couldn't take their pets with them. But I appreciate the sentiment behind the question. Looking at the numbers of offers that are made generally through the housing register, and in particular to homeless households, we still see roughly just over 50% of those lettings have restrictions around pets. So to introduce the change that's being proposed may well have a significant impact, but we don't know what that would be because, as I say, there's been no refusals on those grounds. I think what we would like to do is to put our efforts into persuading the landlords, the housing associations that make those offers, to come more in line with the council's position. And hopefully that way this situation wouldn't become a problem in the future. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Littlemore. Do you have a supplementary question at all, Dee?
Thank you for your response. As you are aware, the temporary pet policy for accommodation was in relation to the suicide of my very best friend. But are you willing to take the risk that this could not happen again? Because my husband was only given one offer of permanent accommodation. He couldn't take his pets to temporary before the policy or to permanent after the policy. And it was the permanent offer. He killed himself after 10 days. what would happen if somebody was offered permanent accommodation and they were only given one offer and they couldn't take their pets. The clause, I feel, should be changed to prevent this tragic situation happening again, which is why I'm continuing to campaign. But I thank you for meeting with me tonight.
Thank you. Did you want to respond, Mr. Littlemore, or is you happy with that? No, that's okay. Thank you very much for taking all your comments on board. You'll hear back from us. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, members, we're going to move to item 18 now, Weavering Heath. Mr. Green will be doing a presentation on this. It's on page 150. No, it's not. It's on page 251. Beg your pardon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I must apologise for it taking so long for us to deal with the petition that came to the committee back in June. What has happened, though, is that in looking into the matter, it's emerged that this is a matter that is for the Policy and Resources Committee to consider, because that's the committee that deals with matters to do with land and property. So what this report is doing is simply asking you to refer the petitioner's request about applying for village green status for Weavering Heath to Policy and Resources Committee, and it will be considered at the next available meeting of Policy and Resources if members are content to do that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hinder, would you like to say anything up first?
Thank you, Chair and members. I'd very briefly like to say that this has resulted because of the enormous depth of feeling of residents in Grove Green to protect this area. And I'd just like to comment that at a very recent planning appeals hearing, which took place here on a planning proposal for the roundabout at Kim's Junction, Newcut and Bearsted Road, it was stated at that appeal hearing by MBC planning officers how important they consider the landscaping around and on Weavering Heath. And this is what the residents wish to protect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearl?
I can see the recommendation on the papers, and I accept the officer's advice that this needs to go to Policy and Resources, and I will be happy to support this in Policy and Resources. All I'd say is I remember that meeting back in June. So I remember Councillor Harper subbing for Councillor Rose, and but the thing that gets me that was 5 months ago. Couldn't we have moved this on rather sooner than this, please? You know. Yes, otherwise I will be supporting what's on the papers, and I'll be supporting it in Policy and Resources.
Yeah, I mean, my response to that, if I can say it from the chair, is that I have kept Councillor Hinder regularly updated, if I can put it like that. I don't know, Mr. Green's got anything further to say?
Yes, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning, Councillor Pearl. We should have dealt with it more quickly, so I do apologise, but we will now proceed to deal with the matter.
Lovely, thank you. Oh, Councillor Powell.
I'll answer to anything tonight, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think also at that meeting that was referred to by Councillor Pell, oh, by the way, I'm supporting this as I did the first time around 5 months ago, that we did say that we'd look at other green spaces as well within the borough to see whether we could actually do exactly the same with them as what we're doing with Weavering Heath. But that seems to have fallen by the wayside. Is there a reason for that, or has it just been an oversight, or will we hear about it in another 5 months?
Yeah. I'm personally not sure about it at all tonight, but I'll find out for you and let you know. Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, so the recommendation is that members are refer the petitioner's request to Policy and Resources Committee. Is that agreed? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So we're going to move back now to agenda item 11, the committee work programme. Oh, page 5. Any comments from anybody at all? No. I've had a, as I mentioned at the last meeting, but again we've had various discussions regarding, because we had a whole lump for November and then we had a lot in December, etc. But things have started to pan out now, and I expect we're going to have a very busy meeting in December. There might be the odd changes, but I understand that the nature reserves one is going quite well at the moment, so we should be expecting that. Okay. Did you want to bring up? Yes, certainly.
I think possibly we have all had email from residents involved in the RSPCA suggestions as far as recommendations about fireworks. If I may read just, I've got copies here. I think probably you've all had copies, but there's copies here if you would like a copy. So if I can just read this shorter piece. The RSPCA believes the law is failing as it does not prevent or sufficiently reduce the risk of fireworks causing distress, injury or anxiety to people, as well as death, injury or distress to animals. We believe, that is the RSPCA, that further research is needed to properly understand the impact of noise on animals, and a number of things can be done to improve the situation for animals and people by introducing a limit on the public use of fireworks or close to specific dates and times, tightening restrictions on the sale of fireworks in the run-up to bonfire night, reducing the maximum noise level of fireworks sold to the public, ensuring they are labelled accurately, licensing all public firework displays, and ensuring displays are better advertised to the public. The RSPCA then go on, suggested motion for local authorities to adopt. It reads, this council resolves to require all public firework displays within the local authority boundaries to be advertised in advance of the event, allowing residents to take precautions for their animals and vulnerable people. Secondly, to actively promote a public awareness campaign about the impact of fireworks on animal welfare and vulnerable people, including the precautions that can be taken to mitigate risks. Thirdly, to encourage local suppliers of fireworks to stock quieter fireworks for public display. This is the motion that the RSPCA would like local councils to put forward. Do I call for a second?
No, it's not necessary, basically, because we're doing the work programme at the moment.
Right.
So you can, we will need a report to come back. So we will put it on the work programme and consider it that way round, and then we will have to agree a report. You might be aware, I think we spoke recently, but we actually did a ban on Chinese lanterns on council-owned land and licensed events, and that went down very well. And I think we can possibly go down a similar route with this. However, my personal view at the moment is that we probably don't have the legislation to actually carry things out. But Councillor Pearl, did you want to come in there?
I've really got 2 points. The first is that I've also received these emails via the RSPCA, and I think what the RSPCA are proposing is sensible and proportionate in terms of dealing with these matters, and I'd be happy to support Councillor Mrs Rose in this sort of item, and if we could have a report on that, that would be jolly nice. My second point is that I noticed on the work programme, of course, that we have our next meeting on the 10th of December. Now, according to my notes, we have a general election that week, and consequently, it is unlikely I will be attending the meeting, and, thinking on James's behalf, I'd like to think that many of you will be unable to attend the meeting as well. I very much would like this meeting, the December meeting postponed, please, for a week.
I mean, we could move everything to January, basically. That's the situation.
I really don't think we get one in before.
No, and it's very, very tight. So, and I mean, I can remember over my times as being a councillor, I have attended meetings in the week of an election, you know, even if it's my own election at the time. So at the moment, I'm afraid we have got to stick with the 10th at this moment in time. But yeah, but and possibly move things into January if we need to. Thank you. But Mrs Rose, we'll put that on the work programme for you, get something sorted. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, was that a proposal, Councillor Pearl, or you've... I'm
happy to make it as a proposal if that would assist, yes.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that then? Councillor Rose, okay. We go for the vote then, folks. Those who want to defer the December the 10th meeting? Those are for?
To where?
To where? You have to stay.
Well, ideally the 17th of September, the following week, but I don't know if that clashes with anything.
Who does it? Clashes with Earl.
Oh.
Well, we don't like them anyway.
Let me just have a look.
Right, folks, we're going to check the diary just to see if anything's, but this won't be, unfortunately, set in stone. We're going to look at it because it's all been thought about, so...
The 16th is free in the town hall.
So I'd like to propose the 16th of December then, please.
Okay. So, you're seconding that, Councillor Rose, are you? Yeah, okay. Proposed by Councillor Pearl, seconded by Councillor Rose, that the December the 10th meeting will be moved to December the 16th. Those in favour? 4, 5. Those against? Okay. You're abstaining. And sorry, I should have asked that, shouldn't I? Abstaining. There's all, yeah. Okay. So the motion is passed that the meeting is. However, I would like to add a caveat to this that if we get back to the team tomorrow morning and they find out that something else has happened, we'll have to take it like that. So, all right. Okay. Thank you very much. Right, we move on to agenda item 12, the member agenda request, GP surgery provision on page 7. I mentioned PERDA earlier on, and I've been advised from the notes we have here, because it is essentially could be seen as a political advertising, could I put it like that, that it could be difficult to actually debate this. So going forward, we can have it in January. Looking at other things, I think that's going to be a bit tight. January, I've asked about this, Councillor Pearl, and January is the best time for officers to get something together. Yeah, Karen.
Sorry. Obviously, what we're looking forward to discuss at a meeting is the motion to request the officers' report, as you'll be aware, rather than the officers' report itself. So that could be discussed either tonight, or if that is too sensitive, that request could be discussed at the 16th of December, with the report then coming at the subsequent meeting.
We will do that, certainly. So we defer to the 16th. Okay, thank you. It's a pity, because I had quite a lot to say on that, actually, so myself. I've read the text regarding the PERDA and legislation, and we're very on a tight wicket. I don't want to get anybody into trouble, so I'll take some responsibility over that decision. Okay. Right, we're moving on now to item 13, second quarter performance and budgeting from Chris and... From Chris? Ola. I beg your pardon, yeah, Ola. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the second update to the Communities, Housing and Environment Committee for the 2019-20 financial year. As with quarter one, the reports on budget monitoring and performance have been drawn together in a single document. In terms of the presentation, it will be a team effort. I'll be covering the financial aspects of the report, whilst my colleague on my left here, Orla Sweeney, will take you through the performance elements. With regard to the financial aspects of the report then, which are contained in Appendix 1 on pages 15 to 27, firstly, the revenue position. The profiled revenue budget is showing a net underspend of 605,000 at the quarter two stage, although spending is expected to pick up slightly in the second half of the year, with a year-end underspend of 126,000 currently forecast. The full detail is set out in the table on pages 21 and 22. However, I'll just pick out a few of the headlines for you. As with quarter one, the most significant factor in the underspend so far is the unspent homelessness prevention grants of 216,000, although these are expected to be spent by the year end. Another notable positive variance is the grounds maintenance income, which is up 56,000 at the halfway stage, and is anticipated to record a surplus of 86,000 at the year end due to additional income from Section 106 funded works and other external works. Recycling collection is also another positive story, with a lower than budgeted net expenditure on the purchase of wheel bins in particular, but in a major factor, and there's a year-end surplus of 80,000 projected there. On the downside, the largest spending pressure is on parks and open spaces, whereby overspending, net overspending of 61,000 is forecast for the year end, and that's due to a residual undelivered savings on a previous restructure. Moving on to capital then, which is summarised on page 26. overall spend at the Q2 stage in the context of a £17.7 million programme for the year was 4.301 million. Total spending of 12.3 million is forecast by the year end, which would result in slippage of 5.3 million, which is spread across 7 schemes. The most significant item in terms of slippage being the indicative schemes programme, in which an original proposal to proceed with the property purchase of 1.2 million has now been withdrawn. In addition, slippage of around 1 million is anticipated on the housing incentives budget. This is an area that is historically underspent, I believe, and future use of the budget is due to be considered by this committee in the new year as part of the updated housing strategy. That concludes the financial aspects of the report, and I'll now hand you over to my colleague Orla, who will take you through the performance elements.
Okay, good evening, members. The performance appendix can be found on pages 28 to 32 of your papers tonight. There are 15 KPIs reportable to this committee for Q2. 4 of these are information only and do not have any targets, but are given a direction of travel. Overall, 9 have achieved the quarterly target and have been rated green, and 2 have missed the quarterly target by less than 10% and have been rated amber, which is all very positive. For the priority safe, clean and green, all targeted KPIs have been rated green, indicating that the standards around cleanliness are being met. And during Q2, the Clean Streets consultation closed with a total of 1,785 responses. 44% of respondents said that their local area was very clean or fairly clean. For the priority homes and communities, 3 KPIs have been rated green and 2 have been rated amber. The number of people prevented or relieved from being homelessness has exceeded the quarterly target. However, the number of households housed through the housing register and the percentage of successful duty outcomes have both marginally been missed this quarter. Both these KPIs are dependent on the supply of properties, which is currently limited. And if this trend continues, it is unlikely that the annual target for the number of households housed through the register will be met. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Orla. Any questions, folks? That's lovely. Okay, so everybody's really happy with everything. That's good, and we got very high percentages. That's good, and it's good to see at the end of the day, and good move. So we've got to approve the recommendations on page 9. So we've got 1, 2, 3 recommendations. Those in favour? Yep, okay, that's unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. Now we go to item 14, medium-term financial strategy. Mr. Green's presenting this for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We reviewed the medium-term financial strategy every year in preparation for setting a budget for the following year. And the medium-term financial strategy sets out in financial terms how we're going to deliver the strategic plan. Now, we agreed a new strategic plan last year, so there aren't any major changes in the MTFS. It's more in the nature of refinements. So, for example, Council agreed action on climate change at its meeting back in April, so that's something that needs to be built into the new MTFS. The other main thing that needs to be reflected in the MTF is the local government funding regime, and we heard in the government spending round announcement earlier in the autumn that the government was going to roll forward the existing arrangements for local government funding with no major changes, really just allowing for updates to reflect inflation. So councils will be allowed to increase council tax by 2%, which is the government's target rate of inflation, and our share of business rates will also go up by inflation. So what does that mean for us? Basically, we can set a standstill budget. We can carry on delivering all the services that we do at the moment, just uprated for inflation, provided members agreed to increase council tax by 2%. There's only a few caveats to that. First of all, we have already committed to delivering certain savings over the next 4 years, and those are set out on page 72 of the papers in front of you. So we do need to deliver those, or if we can't, we need to find savings elsewhere of the same value. And also, if there are any new things that we want to do, because we have the constraint of operating within a standstill budget, certainly we can grow expenditure in one area, but we would have to offset that by reductions elsewhere. So that's the position for next year, 2021. The position after that is much more uncertain. The government said that it would introduce a new local government funding regime from 21-22, but we don't know exactly what that will mean for Maidstone. So the way that's dealt with in the MTFS is that a range of different scenarios are presented depending on whether the outcome is favourable, adverse or neutral for us. The MTF also talks about our capital programme, and the starting point here is the existing capital programme, which is summarised on page 64 of the papers, and we will be looking at new bids to go into the capital programme. So long as capital bids are self-funding, there's no reason why we can't include those within a new capital programme. So we are looking for new proposals that meet our strategic objectives. So that's it in a nutshell. This is the opportunity for your committee to consider the draft medium-term financial strategy, and any comments that you make will be fed back to Policy and Resources Committee, which will be meeting next week to finalise the draft medium-term financial strategy before it goes on to Council. So welcome any comments or questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Councillor Powell, you're first.
Mr. Chairman, I'm feeling quite thick tonight. In the previous report, we was talking about the sort of kind of major underspend. I'm not talking about the capital projects. And then I look at Mark's report, which seems to be very, very finely balanced. Either this is an excellent piece of accounting, which I'm sure it is, Mark, so, or I'm missing the point. Could you please explain that?
Sorry, Councillor Powell, were you referring to the underspends on capital schemes? What will happen is if, as projected in the Q2 report, we've underspent on capital, what will happen is that if you look at the capital programme on page 65, the figures for 2021 will go up by the amount by which we've underspent this year. We'll just carry forward those amounts. But the figures that are in the draft MTFS are the original figures. We will change them depending on the outturn for this year. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, at the end, it's all very finely balanced. I couldn't just work out how we got there. That was all.
In terms of the revenue position, well, you're absolutely right in relation to the revenue position in that we have allowed in the projections, in the strategic revenue projections for inflation in the way that I've suggested. So most of our costs will go up in line with inflation. Biggest item is salaries. We've also assumed that on the revenue side, council tax goes up by 2%. So you would expect in that situation to have a balanced budget. It'll only go out of balance if, for example, inflation goes up by more than we've projected, or if we get some spending pressures. So I take the point, and this is assuming that everything carries on as it is at the moment, and we get no nasty shocks that blow us off course. But that's the assumption in the figures.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Rose, and I've got Councillor Perry.
Thank you. So just two things really. So just to clarify, you're confident that with the 2% standstill increase in line with inflation, that we as a committee or as a council would be able to maintain the services we have now, sort of point one. And while I'm here, looking on page 45, we've got required savings cumulative and savings identified cumulative. Just to clarify for my own benefit, the differences in those figures, so where we've got, say, 2021, we've got required savings 3.2 and against identified savings 2.8. So that means we have to find 0.4 more in savings that need to be found in the current budget. How do sort of those two things marry up, if you get what I mean?
Yes, to deal with your questions in turn, Councillor Rose. First of all, yes, I hope that if the council tax goes up by 2% and all the other assumptions pan out, then we will be able to maintain existing services. Of course, I can't say for certain that that will be the case, but if the assumptions that are set out here turn out to be correct, then that is what would happen. On your other question, on page 45, the table there refers to the projections that we started the year with. So that was the projections that were in the budget that was agreed by council back in February. Those projections have now been updated in the pages from 74 onwards. And what we've been able to do is, you're absolutely right, there was a shortfall of 400,000 that we were anticipating for 2021 at the beginning of the year, but with a number of things that have changed during the course of the year, we've now reduced that to a surplus. If you look on page 74, a surplus of 96,000, and that's largely because of the favourable settlement that we got from the government. I'm saying favourable, more favourable than we had feared would be the case. So yes, we were looking at a 400,000 deficit. Now we're looking at a 96,000 surplus for next year.
You want to come back? Yeah.
So so based on that then, so essentially from the amounts that we agreed in February, you've been able to, since that time, pull that back from minus 400,000 to plus 90 odd. So that will be the case then each year going forward then, will it? Because obviously we've got 5.1 to 3.7, 5.7 to 4.3, going back to page 45. Will you then, in the coming years, up to 2024, have to find similar savings in the budget to make it balance for the 2% each year to work?
Yes, I mean, obviously there's a number of things that have changed in the latest projections. Maybe if I can refer you to the table on page 37, because that summarises the position that we now face. I mean, the detail is in the appendix, but if you look at paragraph 210, scenario 2 neutral, you can see that for 2021, we're projecting a surplus of 0.1 million. Well, that's the 96,000 that I referred to earlier. But then we do have a deficit in subsequent years. So on all of the scenarios, we face a deficit in 21-22. So before we get too relaxed about all this, we can't forget that we will have to find savings to cover that deficit for the years from 21-22 onwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Yes, just building on that, of course, anything can happen in 2 years' time. We're not forecasts are always difficult, aren't they? But it's I'm very relieved at what you said about the under recovery. And that's we say to manage that. Just a question, it just slightly puzzled me, and I just would like you to just elaborate. It's page 52, and it's para 4.5, and really it's the final sentence where it says, given the risk of an economic slowdown and the fact that growth of 2% per annum has never actually been achieved, a more prudent assumption for increases in the council tax base would be 1.5%. Could you elaborate a bit on that? I was trying to understand what that actually meant.
What we're talking about here is the fact that we have new houses coming on stream in the borough all the time. And the pattern, which is shown in the table on page 51, is that over the past few years, we've been looking at increases of about 1.5%. And actually, in historical terms, that's really going some. I mean, if you think 1.5% extra homes every year, I mean, we can see that around us in Maidstone, so it's no surprise. But what paragraph 4.5 is saying is that probably it makes sense to assume 1.5% for next year, because if you look at the history, that looks about right. I mean, it's not an exact science, but it was 1.52% in 2019, so maybe it'd be safe to say 1.5% for next year as well.
Right, thank you very much, everybody. Yes, and I mean, regarding the housing, etc., is that it's always market dependent, and we all know that. But that percentage could easily change with the projections that we've seen recently that are coming forward nationally. I think that there could well be some changes on that. But generally, the MCFS is essentially, it's flat. With the greatest respect, there isn't a lot happening, so that's the way we are with it. And so we're just asked to consider and comment on the draft medium-term financial strategy 2021 to 24-25. Those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. It's lovely. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 15, and that's the housing allocation scheme review with Mr. Littlemore, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Stewart's going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a report on the housing allocation scheme review. And the allocation scheme is a document that we use to decide who is eligible to join the Council's housing register for social housing. We're proposing, the main amendments we're proposing are to support the homeless prevention work for the housing officers and to ensure that people or households that are prevented from going into temporary accommodation are given an extra opportunity to obtain social housing before actually entering temporary accommodation. A very little bit of background. The current scheme, our housing allocation scheme, was introduced back in 2013, and it's been very successful, and it awards additional priority to applicants in work, volunteers, armed forces, etc. And it's strictly done on priority dates. So the longer you've been on the housing register, the more chance you have of actually obtaining social housing. Recently, last year in April 2018, the Homeless Reduction Act was introduced, which extended the period in which people or households could be deemed to be threatened with homelessness. And what we're finding is the people that actually are approaching us for homelessness, or households that are approaching us for homelessness, one of the main reasons, or the main reason they're ending up in temporary accommodation, is people or households being evicted from their family and friends. So they're staying with parents, etc., and they're actually being told to move. So what we're proposing in this amendment is to give applicants who are threatened with homeless, which means they've got been extended to a prevention duty, i.e. we're working with the household or the people, give them additional opportunities to secure social housing, but it would support the prevention work of the officers. We're also finding that people that are going into temporary accommodation, or households that are going into temporary accommodation, we're offering them more what are called direct lets, which actually bypasses most of the allocation scheme. And instead of giving people the choice, we're basically offering them suitable accommodation. This is having an effect whereby households that we're trying to prevent their homelessness and have got other reasons. So there's other reasons for being on the housing register, either overcrowded or their medical needs or their hardship needs. They're having less and less opportunities to be successful to social housing. So to summarise, we're proposing that we change the bands that are currently in the allocation scheme and give a high priority to the people that are we're working with to prevent their homelessness. And we're going to rename the bands, because currently at the moment all the bands are banded A, B, C and D, and this is giving a false impression that there's a higher priority of banding, when that's not the case with our allocation scheme. Our banding is done on the reason why you're homelessness, not a priority. So we're looking to amend the wording around that as well. I'll have to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Rose.
So I'm always getting in first tonight. Thanks for that. It's really interesting reading the report, and obviously this is something a lot of parts of Maidstone have a real struggle with, but particularly in places like Parkwood, where I represent. So I'm really pleased that you're looking to stratify it, the priority for people based on the way that you're working with them. Do you think this goes far enough? Do you think there are other ways we can stratify it based on need or vulnerability, or people's willingness to work within the process that you're setting up? Like, is there more we can do, you think, to help this? Because I think stratifying it in more ways to help people that are the most vulnerable, I think, is the best way forward. But what's your view on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We used to, going back in the day a few years ago, we used to run a points-based system, whereby households were given a certain amount of points for various reasons. That could be all sorts of medical reasons, vulnerability, domestic abuse, whatever. But what we found, like most councils, was that it's very hard, how can you decide what priority one household could have over another? Their vulnerability is someone's household A, case particular, higher than A than B. So that's why we went down the route of giving the priority date as how long someone's been on the register. Now, we do have, within the banding, for example, our medical band. So any households that have got a specific medical need are in a specific band, and those properties that we get through that are adapted for those needs are matched advertised within that band. So, yes, it's always, this was seen as the most fairest and simplest way. We're not proposing to change that element of it as such at the moment. Do you want to add, John? Or?
I think Mr. Stewart's right. You can get yourself into a real pickle, and I understand the temptation to try and award priority based on that. But to give you a real example of how difficult that can be, we had recently 2 households. One was a single parent family with 3 children. The parent in that situation had a terminal cancer, and we had another household where the baby twins in that family had a degenerative disorder, and it's how do you it's impossible. So we did, when we devised the policy back in 2013, we did go out to everybody on the housing list and said, what do you think is the fairest way? And overwhelmingly people said by date order. So, and it has worked well for us in that sense.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I know there's not a perfect answer to it. It's just, I see the same things that you see, and yeah, obviously situations like that, you can't win, can you? I suppose it's just, you know, if we're going down the ultra sort of fairness and equity route, sort of no matter what, I guess, you know, it's going to cause problems of its own. Obviously, if you have got someone that is in, maybe not in those sort of situations, but someone that's got a need. There are situations that are more clean cut than that. You've got to say, in terms of one person's need over another that maybe went on 2 weeks before someone else, say, for example. So I don't know. I know it's really difficult in terms of like the moral quandaries that come upon your team with these things. But I hope this helps, but I do feel that maybe we'll be looking at this again in 6 months, 12 months' time and saying, well, that's helped a little bit, but what else can we do? The only other thing I want to say on this point is something I do sometimes come across in my own visits is where perhaps someone's got to the top of the register and come to the accommodation they found. Can you just describe the process then if they come to the property but find when they move in that it's not suitable for them? I know that there's a time period for when they can say, "Oh, this doesn't work for me." But how does that kind of work now in your own words?
Because of choice-based lettings, the onus is very much on the applicant. So they'll be able to see there's always a photograph of the property, a description of the property. So in terms of its suitability, we have to make a balance between trying to match what the applicant wants, but also trying to protect other people on the list who might be wanting that same property, and also the landlord against their rent losses, because all the time property's empty, they're not being able to collect rent. So the way this scheme operates is that if somebody bids on a property and then they change their mind at the offer when they go and view the property, if we think the reasons that they put forward are reasonable to refuse that, then that's fine. They go back where they were and they continue bidding. However, if we think the reasons that they're given are unreasonable, then they are penalised by their date is set, their priority date, as you heard, the all-important one, is set to the point of that refusal. Yeah. But that's made very clear to people.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Powell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is just a question for clarification more than anything. So I represent the Shetway South Ward, and one of the questions that I'm getting all the time is, you know, please, Eddie, can you get us out of this place? There's people throwing stones at the windows. And I'm not just joking, actually, there's a lot of smashed windows up on Shetway, especially after firework night. But they're saying if they put in for an exchange of property, it can take them 18 months, it can take them 2 years. But the question I was going to ask, what criteria do we set for Maidstone residents, people that actually live within the borough, changing homes, or do we have a separate thing for people that are moving from outside of the borough into some of the housing association properties? Because what I'm told is that there isn't any difference. So how does a person, for instance, I'm going to use an example, I was going to say Hackney, but I won't, I'll say Medway. You know, if a person there wants to move into Maidstone, what is the criteria? Is it any different from the person that wants to move from Toville onto the Shetway estate?
There's a local connection criteria for everyone. Okay, so residence is 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
And you can have a connection around employment. So if you lived in Medway, but you've worked, I don't know, you work at Maidstone Hospital full-time, that can give you a connection. So there's that hurdle, if you like, that people have to get over. But once people are on the list, then yes, they're competing with each other. There's no difference then. And we treat housing register applicants exactly the same as transfer cases. So if you're already in a Golding Homes or a Hyde or a Moat property, you're all treated the same. We did have the situation following stock transfer back in 2004 was that the Golding Homes would hold back 25% of their lettings just for their tenants to transfer, and the 75% would go into the general pool. But there was a feeling that their tenants weren't getting a fair bite of the cherry. So when we allowed everybody to be treated the same, it was felt actually that gave people a better opportunity if they were already tenants. There is a separate route as well called mutual exchanges that tenants can do. So if they find another tenant within a housing association or a local authority property, they can do a swap if the landlords agree to that, if criteria is met.
Right, so there's no preference for people that actually live within the borough?
Only in as much as the local connection criteria that exists.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just add to that, that we do often get, one of our main queries actually within the team is we hear or receive emails, people saying, well, they've got a house and they come from Medway, for example. This is very common. But they do have to meet the local connection criteria, which is in our policy. And we're very strict at this. For example, we get more applicants, apart from Medway, we get more applicants within the Borough of Maidstone to join our housing register than any other borough within Kent. But we have less people actually on the register because we're very good at gatekeeping to make sure that people meet the criteria originally. Sorry. Oh, sorry, okay, so that's not right. So, yeah, so they do have to meet the local connection criteria. That isn't always obvious, as John pointed out, that it could be by employment, for example, or they could have family living here, which to someone moving in, well, they've come from such and such a place. It's not always obvious.
Sorry, and there is an exception to that we should have mentioned, and that is certain schemes that are in rural areas part of the planning permission will be that they've been allowed to be built as long as it meets the local housing needs. So people that have a specific connection with that parish area will get priority over everyone else.
Thank you. Councillor Kimmins?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to comment on something that you said, John. About the mutual, I want to ask something else as well. About the mutual exchanges. I don't know whether they've changed the ruling, but the ruling used to be on mutual exchanges within social housing that as long as both parties agreed, they could mutually exchange anywhere in the country. It didn't. There was no hard and fast rule to stop them doing a mutual exchange. Is that still the case?
It's a little bit more complicated than that because the ability to mutual exchange actually goes back to what type of tenancy you hold, because it's all about the right of assignment. Now, secure tenancies have the right of assignment, but assured tenancies don't. But the housing associations, mainly those that are part of their national federation, give their tenants the same rights as a secure tenant. So if you like, it's not a right in law, but it's a right that the landlord can give them through the contract of the tenancy. So I wouldn't say that every tenant's got the right to do it, because it will depend on the landlord and the tenancy that's held, but generally speaking, you're correct. You should be able to mutual exchange throughout the country if you so desire.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was going to say, because I'm used to dealing with assured tenancies, which used to be the old guaranteed tenancies, didn't it? They've changed all the wordings on it. I've got to remember what the other question was now that I wanted to speak about. You'll have to come back to me in 2 seconds because I'm having a bit of a moment. Sorry.
I haven't got anybody else at the moment, so could you make it 1 second? Ask Siri. That's fine. Well, you can ask it outside the meeting if you want something confirmed, so, yeah. Yeah. That's fine. Yeah. That's good. Okay, thank you very much for that, folks. I was going to say, just to say a thank you for the workshop that we had a few weeks back. That was it sort of set the scene for this. Councillor Kimmons, that's 5 seconds.
Yeah, see, I knew it'd come back eventually. No, it was also about the if you refuse to accept what you've been to see, and you've obviously looked at it online and said, I want to go and have a look at this property, yeah, and then you change your mind. Now, is it the officer that makes the decision to put that person back on, you said, the reset date? Or is there a set of rules that you have to comply to?
So yeah, there is an officer that makes the decision after we, a member of the Home Choice team, quite often speak or email or communicate with the applicant and with the Housing Association to see the reasons what were given. They make an assessment. There is a review process though, so if the applicant is not happy that their priority date's been reset, they can then request a review, and that is done by myself. In that particular case, which again is published in our allocation scheme, then it gets looked by a senior officer to see if they would like that case reviewed.
Okay, yeah, sorry. One other thing then. The decision is made by one officer.
Yes.
Okay, now, how long does it take when that officer's made that decision? Does it take for you to review that, for it to go back?
We have up to, again, it's in our allocation scheme, it takes up to 56 days for that review to be undertaken. Up to 56 days, yeah. No.
That's a maximum, not a minimum. So, I mean, the applicant can withdraw their bid up until the point that the bidding on that property closes. So they do have a period of time in which to reconsider their position. But once they've gone and viewed it, normally the process is quite quick because, as I said earlier, A, you've got the applicant who wants to know where they stand, but B, you've got the landlord who wants that property let quickly. So it's not a case where we hang around. But the reason it's 56 days is to match the homelessness legislation, where somebody has a statutory right to ask for a review of that offer, and that is set down in legislation as 56 days. So we just matched it across.
Yeah, I find then that the 56 days is absolutely ludicrous. It's stupid. Something that I would suggest is, rather than one officer making a decision, that it's done by two officers, so that the mistakes are very, very minimal, because mistakes are made. Everybody makes mistakes, and you want to make sure that that mistake is not made, especially when you're dealing with somebody who could potentially be homeless.
Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. Thank you. I've got Councillor Rose again.
Sorry to, I know the report didn't really cover this per se, but just following on from that, it's obviously something that we in our wards come across. If we're both talking about it, it must happen a reasonable amount. Obviously we don't have the data on it, but I come across it, and it sounds like so do you. I've always thought a way that you could cut this down, this happening to people, is if you gave them one free refusal, if you like. It's very rare where I've come across people that have had multiple houses in a row that weren't suitable for them, but it sounds like I'm not the only one that's coming across people that are looking at something online. They've been sent the pack on it, looks nice. They go and see it. It doesn't meet it doesn't meet their requirements, or they don't like it. Even if they don't like it, we've all got everyone should have a choice as to if something about their home isn't necessarily, it might be completely habitable, but maybe they're 80 years old and the stairs are thinner than my hand. I feel like it would cut this problem away quite significantly if people were allowed to say no once and not have to go to a lengthy review process, and it might might actually cut down some of the reviews and appeals and bureaucratic elements that come about because of it. But do you have a view on that?
Just, unfortunately, I haven't got any figures, but I'm a bit surprised. I get very few, it depends, but probably 1 or 2 a month where I'll have to look at a review of a priority date to be changed, if that. And we don't, as a rule, amend the priority dates that much, because if there's a valid reason, we don't, or I say if we assess it's a valid reason, we don't amend the priority date. And as I say, it's interesting to note that it's obviously come up on, in your area, etc., because it's not something that we do that often. So it's something maybe I need to look at and get some figures, etc.
I actually, and maybe this may be me being completely remiss, but I actually wasn't aware there was an appeal to be made. And all the people I've come across, it's always sort of been stopped at I went to look at a house, didn't like it, and I was moved down the register. They didn't know either. Like, the people I've come across weren't aware there was like a higher authority to approach. I'm certainly really pleased that I know now and can suggest that when I come across it next. But it might be worth it sounds like this is your bailiwick, so it might be worth just having a look yourself maybe around what the numbers are like at the level below yours, how many people go to a house and don't like it, if you know what I mean. I'm sorry, I know this isn't quite in the remit of the report and everything, but it seemed like an appropriate time to sort of bring it up, I guess, in committee, and I guess you feel the same.
Not at all. I mean, that's what the committee's here for, isn't it? The only word of caution I would say to you is that the reason it used to be free offers many years ago, but the landlords did lobby us to change that. And the other issue was that people who are being owed a duty under the homelessness legislation only receive one suitable offer, and it was felt fair to bring everybody in line with that. But we're quite happy to go away, look back over the last 12 months to see what not the issues, how many refusals we've had, and then how many have gone to appeal and report back to you, and that might be something you want to consider further.
Thank you.
That's fine, and thank you for your input. No, it's good. It's good to hear. It's really good. And at the end of the day, I think if we had the housing stock available, we probably would have so many rules, or criteria. But I won't go there because of PERDA. Mrs. Rose, did you want to?
Yes, just to underline what the member of the public was speaking about, as far as possibly homeless people who not necessarily we would think of as being vulnerable, but talking about the pets that they have, which mean a great deal to them and support them very much psychologically, and just asking that be taken into consideration as far as the situation, as far as housing them with their pet, which is, I know, a very difficult situation, but it's also something which seems almost like setting up people to fail if you take away possibly what you might call their very best friend and their psychological support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, we're just asked to agree to the changes in the council's housing allocation, or the allocation scheme on page 78. Everybody agreed? Sorry, those for? Yep, that's you. Councillor Perry, you vote? No, it's okay. It's all right. That's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, members, we are now going to go on to item 16, which is the Maidstone Approach Improvements Project, which you may remember from the last meeting. Over to Jen Shepherd and John Edwards, please.
Thank you, members. Obviously, some of you were here at the last committee where I went through this, the presentation and the proposals. So in some way, apologies to those members for repeating it, or equally, hopefully, you know, you'll see what's come to sort of fruition of what we want to present to you tonight. So this particular report is regarding some real specifics of the scheme. So as I said, I gave a background last time that we had £74,000 funding from the business rates retention pilot to do improvements to the A20. And as part of that, we're doing a number of streets and improvements, and you'll see some bollards have gone in, some new street nameplates, some new planting is going in. I think we're about 10,000 bulbs in of the 20,000 we're planting. So that's all going well, but we had some real specifics around the sort of the heritage aspects that we wanted to get formal approval from committee. So what we've got as a side is also some slides, just because I appreciate in the report, they're probably not that clear being black and white, so hopefully that will assist. So I'll try and cover that off. So the first part, so the first recommendation is regarding the new Welcome to Maidstone sign we were talking about. We've actually had some new artwork since the report was produced, because I think in the details of the report I said the wording wasn't quite right. We were looking for the county town of Kent, rather than the Kent's historic county town, which was included in there. A bit more simple. Said the blue is Maidstone blue, it would have the crest. It reflects the heritage theme we were looking for, which, as I said, I covered in last month. So that's covered in this report, and we were seeking sort of approval to proceed with that signage. We're then looking at, and I think remember last time I talked about 4 installations to celebrate heritage and history of Maidstone, specifically an iguanodon silhouette. We have worked with Maidstone Museum on an image we felt was sort of reflective of the iguanodon history we have as a borough. So this, we were looking at, I think last time in the presentation it was sort of a silhouette of an iguanodon as was. We're now looking at more probably a skeleton. I think it'll give a bit more dimension to it. We might try and do something clever if we can to make the legs stand out a little bit more so it becomes a little bit more 3D. That's me being very optimistic. Also some bicycle silhouettes, so I haven't got a picture of that. Some bicycle silhouettes, potentially 3 different, you know, things like a penny farthing, a modern day bike, and then something in the middle. We're still working on exactly what it would be, but at the start of the cycle path, to really get people to realise, okay, there is a cycle path here, I can cycle pretty much all the way into town, which would be great. A hop frame and planting around, that's the area opposite the entrance to Turkey Mill. So you know at the moment it's sort of a bramble bank, which is very wild, and we'll try and keep as much of that as possible, but having some swathes cut into it and looking at planting some sort of Kentish fruiting or blossom trees, fruit trees, a Kent cobnut tree, and repurposing a frame to create sort of a hop feature growing up, which we thought would, you know, reflect our history with farming and agriculture, and then also looking at a Go Green, Go Wild inspired tree carving. So you will know if you've driven down that road, there are 2 giant trees that were cut down. There's still a massive sort of, I would say more than stump, it's basically the whole of the trunk of the trees have been left on that stretch of road. We've cleared it with KCC because they are their trees, that we could do some, basically some carving into that. Using a chainsaw, so basically carve some features into the trees that are there, rather than just leave them as empty sort of tree stumps. You know, create a bit more feature around Kentish wildlife in particular. So we're thinking maybe hedgehogs, squirrels, maybe some invertebrates, that type of image. So they're the ones that we're definitely certain about, we really want to push forward. What you've got there is also an image that I said last time about, and they're starting to look at working on how they would construct this. We're going to do this in-house, a giant bug hotel that's hexagonal, so it looks actually a little bit like said honeycomb, that sort of feature that will be on the corner of Willington Street and the Ashford Road. There's a great big sort of corner there, with also some planting of sort of wildflower meadow, just to bring that colour and again to sort of promote the pollinators. So all in all, that's what we have and we'd like you to to approve tonight. On top of that, those of you remember last time, I was very keen on some railings. So I don't know if you do the picture first. So I think I showed you the artwork last time. I can't remember because it's all in development of the townscape of Maidstone to go on the railings. Well, I have a sample. So this is what we were talking about. So it is possible. As you can see, what John's highlighting is that little piece of it. So we've only got, so obviously the Queen's Monument. We will look at it being black because obviously against silver railings you wouldn't see it if it was just metal. But we can do that. As I said, the price to do all of it is about £4,000, I think. Yeah. So well within the £74,000 budget and would look significantly better than horrible old railings. So within the report, there is still slightly further operational exploration, but I'd like, obviously, we're seeking approval that you've seen this, it looks like a good idea, and we will try and proceed to get it to fruition and actually deliver this. There may be some slight changes, because obviously that's probably a little bit weak, and might have to be removed and some of the sharp edges, but ultimately, it's achievable. So that's where we're at, and really it's then for any questions, and obviously I said the 3 recommendations are set out in the report.
Sorry, lovely. I was checking business on my phone just to let you know.
I don't know if John wants to cover
Yeah.
a few more pictures of progress.
Yeah, so just to add to what Jen said, that'll be slightly bigger. It needs to be slightly bigger. And the initial display actually showed a picture of Coleman's House and the Fremlin's Walk. They wasn't particularly attractive, so we've actually added Archbishop's Palace and the Queen's Monument to that. So work we've already taken, as we've actually renewed the heritage, the tourism sign, the brown sign there. We've added the History and Museum Centre, and I don't know if you remember previously there was a bit of an add-on which was a different colour, which was promoting, I can't remember, Loch Meadow. We've already replaced the street nameplates to our standard street nameplates, and hopefully you spotted those. And also in the background, where Huntman Lane is, you'll see we've installed 7 heritage bollards in our blue, and we have about another 14, 15, maybe 16 to go in as well. So getting rid of those really horrible, tired, rusted, basically galvanised poles and putting those much more attractive in. We've already received great compliments for those bollards we've put in. You'll also see there's a 30 miles an hour sign there. We've also done an audit of all of the traffic signage, and we've replaced all of the heavily damaged ones, or the ones just over time has become a little bit worn, and actually changes as well. This is the day that we installed our new bus shelter, so you can probably see we did all this work in-house. And you'll also see on the background there that we've removed an awful lot of the horrible vegetation from around that wall. So actually making a feature of that stone wall. And during that week, and hopefully no one was too offended by our traffic management, we also did repairs on that wall where it's been whacked throughout the years as well. Massive cutbacks of vegetation from the trees that was overhanging from the Moat Park area, and also slightly further down there you'll see that we've actually been painting some of the doors and what have you. So as I said to you before, we're the grunt work is almost there now. Now we need to make our decisions, and hopefully you guys will agree with us with our niceties. I think what's going to make this project stand out to the most, and that was just the new signage going up. I can't remember. There we go. That's the same. And important to say that most of this work has been done in-house. You'll see the traffic management we put in. My street cleansing team was able to do that because obviously we use these skills to clean our roads. So by having those multi-skilled staff that we have, we're able to keep the project cost down. Professional, well, not that we're not professional, but contractors doing our traffic management is incredibly expensive. It can almost be as expensive as the thing that you're trying to install. So by doing that in-house, we've really have kept the budget of 74,000 in check. And that's the end of me. Have I forgot anything, Jen?
Ollie, thank you. And as I mentioned earlier on, but the stencil will be very good for doing your own Christmas cards as well, even with a pen. So, but thank you very much. I've got you down now, Cynthia. I've got Councillor Pearl first, please.
I think this is pretty impressive work, actually. I just want to pick up on one point, and that is the sign, which I'm very much in favour of it being in blue, even if it's in the Purdah period and stuff. I'm just trying to rack my brains. Was it blue last time? Because I did sort of just try and look back and at the previous meetings, and I couldn't find it. Is this an innovation, or has it changed to blue, or was it blue last time?
Last time it was actually white that was presented, and this was a design that came up, the sign company actually came back with. So we've only seen white ones out there. We had looked at what other authorities had done with that heritage look, and they'd come back with white. They had then presented us to say, actually, if your colour's blue, we've got all the lamp columns are about to be painted blue, the bollards are blue. Have you considered that? And actually, we thought that stood out. It was different to what other authorities did, so that's why we've presented it. But equally, we'll take comments if they don't like the blue.
You want to come back, yeah?
Is there any chance of that getting installed before December the 12th?
That's very close to Purdah. I've already bought the yellow paint. I've got Councillor Rose next, please.
Thank you. Just two really quick things. I really like this. I want it on the fence in my house. But just thinking a little bit about, I'm sure you've thought of this, but that would hurt quite a bit if you came off your bike onto that. And obviously you've got quite a few spiky tops. I'm sure you've thought of it, but yeah, maybe just round them off. And also, And also, again, I'm sure you've come across it, but there is, on that section of the A20 where that bus stop has gone in, just next to that, about 5 metres up the road towards Maidstone, there's a place on the wall where there's a photo, and it's a memorial. I'm sure everyone's seen it, but just I know that there's not always fresh flowers in there, but it is regularly visited. So maybe just make a note to not get rid of that. It was a long time ago, but still, So just if you.
If I could just respond to that. Yes, the memorials, absolutely. I've walked the A20 far too much. I feel like I know every crack and break there. The actual memorials is in very good nick, and if it wasn't, we'd be trying to contact the family to bring it up to spec. But it's actually in very good quality. So yeah, absolutely no plans to remove that or to move it or to do anything. It's very fresh, even it was a number of years ago, but still fresh in everyone's memory. But yeah, absolutely no plans to remove or to do anything with that.
Okay, thank you. I have Councillor Kimmins next, please.
First off, an apology because I'm going to give a criticism. I'm really sorry. When I look at that sign, I'm really, really disappointed. I mean, not because it's blue, obviously. I like the blue. I do like the blue. To me, Maidstone is all about the coat of arms. Okay? You come to a place, welcome to Maidstone. Why do you need welcome to Maidstone? Okay, you have welcome to Maidstone because you want to say, you're welcome, you've come to Maidstone. But you want to see that big coat of arms and remind people that this is the county town of Kent. Because outside of Maidstone, you ask people, what's a county town? They'll always tell you it's Canterbury. That's the thing you need to remind them. So I think the coat of arms needs to be bigger, because from here, I can't, I'm a driver, I can't see what that is. I want to see the dinosaur on there. I want to see the three dots depicting the three villages. I can't, from here, I can't see that. The second one is the picture of the skeleton. That you see, did you say that that's going to be on a sign?
it's going to be a silhouette very much made out of that same metal against the backdrop of Moat Park Wall between the bus stop that's gone in, and there's some signs further up, so opposite the Newcut Junction. So it was going to, there's a large space we want to put there.
Could I just say, absolutely, we need to remember dimensions. The sign that you're saying there, Councillor Clements, was it's going to be over just under 2.5 metres wide, and I'm trying to think that in old money, and over 4 foot high. So it's a big piece of kit. If we have to change with the logo to make it bigger, absolutely, but it probably mean the sign will need to be a bit bigger itself, because everything obviously has to be in proportion. As for the dinosaur skeleton, we're talking to our museum, been really helpful. We need to get the dimensions right. It needs to be big enough to go, it needs to be big enough to say wow. It needs to be well, and Jennifer alluded to that actually we're going to try to put the arms, the head and the legs as a separate structure to give it that three-dimensional feel. But yeah, dimensions is something, I've played around with this image, and if you make it too long it looks mad, and if it looks too small it looks like a lizard. So we have to make sure we get the dimensions spot on, but they will be well pieces. These will be something will not stop traffic, but while you're stopping traffic you can look at them thinking, yeah. But we have spoken and interacted with the sign makers, and if we have to make that logo bigger, we will.
Just to come back because that was what I noticed about the skeleton was it was a bit and I know we've probably got some really good professionals down at Maidstone Museum, but do you think that maybe we could ask the Natural History Museum if they could do us a better sort of drawing?
Yeah, absolutely. There is the iguanodon, like most things, you become a little bit of a mini geek about these things. There's loads of different types of iguanodon. There's a swamp iguanodon, there's a land iguanodon, and yeah, I know, I've become this anorak. And the skeleton, because obviously the skeleton was found in Maidstone, that's why we thought that was the most appropriate. But by finding, we will find the most stunning one and the one that relates to Maidstone the most. But yeah, that's not a problem. So there is quite a few out there. I don't think they'll let us borrow the skeleton, unfortunately, but that would be very handy.
Yeah, all I can say is I think we've got the wrong one there compared with the coat of arms.
Okay, that's noted, and we will find an image to like on what mirrors the image on the logo. So it's a bit of a little bit of
That's good, thank you. Mrs. Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Now I'm just a sub on this committee. I didn't realise this was happening. So I'm really pleased to see that we've got twinned with Beauvais, France on the sign. Because a lot of people in Maidstone don't know that we are twinned with Beauvais. So I'm really pleased that that's been featured on the sign. And I think all the other things that you're proposing are really good.
Lovely, thank you. Mrs. Young.
Thank you. I think this is a wonderful project. It's really good. I just want to ask about the silhouettes. I think they're lovely, but what sort of size will they be? I think if they're the size you've shown, they'll be too small. They'll be totally insignificant. Because remember, people are driving along in their cars, so they need to be large in proportion to the fence itself that they're actually going to go on. Oh.
There we go. Yes, so we see that image behind us. At the moment, we believe that will be spread over 6 metres, which will be 3 single pedestrian railings. We believe it will be 80 centimetres tall, which is kind of like that. Maybe a little bit less, yes. We already have permission from KCC to put something on the railings. They will need to approve the final design. As Jennifer said, the sample we have there, it will need to be made safer. We also have to ensure that we do not compromise the structure of the railings, because those railings are designed to take an impact. But yeah, that will be the railings. Again, like everything else we've been talking about in scale, it has to be well. There is no point of having something, a tiddly little line at the back that people squint. It needs to be boom, wow, this is what we're all about. So yeah, dimensions are important, and we've taken many measurements. Again, I could bore you about pedestrian railings now, but I won't. But yeah, so it will be 6 metres wide and about 80 centimetres tall.
How many of them will there be? Did you say on 3 sets of railings?
We will, to make maximum impact, initially we was going to put them on every railing, and then we thought, actually, that's going to look a bit daft. So if we're going to put them in areas where boom impact. So opposite the Weathering Cottage, the side entrance to Moat Park, that's highly likely to be an area there. Some of the railings, the long set of railings past Huntsman's Lane, probably some in there. So we're going to spatter them around somewhere to make a bit of a more focal point. And where we haven't got our points of interest, as we call them, such as Welcome to Maidstone, Iguanodon, the Bug Hotel, we're going to strategically place them so there is something dotted along the route to keep people interested. Because even though people are doing the whole A20 stretch, remember, we've got to consider that people are coming in from the from Newcut into town, and they may not have seen that initial attraction, so we need to make sure the routes, everyone is covered on the route, regardless of how you get in there.
Is that going to be freestanding? Is it going to be on a stand, or is it going to be up against the wall?
So, as you come out along the A20, just where the bus lane starts, this is where we imagine it to be. So along there, it will be on a concrete plinth around some ornate pampas grass and ornate grass plantings, and yeah, concrete plinth. It will have a structure. It will have a structure on the back to give it the rigidity and the structural support it needs. But we're trying to work out a way so we can hide that structural support so it doesn't lose the impact of the skeleton and all the fine detail work. We believe with the new wooden bus shelter there, that ragstone wall, some fantastic planting, and a bit of summer bulbs that's going in there as well, that will kind of almost give it a bit of a Jurassic feel, we think. So, well, we know so it will. Well, the bus stops was in Jurassic times, I'm sure they were. But yeah, so it'll give that all feel. It was. But yeah, it'll give that all natural feel to the place.
One more thing. You have done a wonderful job with the wall. It really looks great. But will you maintain that? Will you have it in your planned maintenance? So you'll carry on doing that over the next 20 years or however long?
Yeah, so obviously we've been provided with the £74,000 funding for this, but actually some of this work has been funded out of existing budgets. We already have a transport budget for our bus shelters and those street nameplates, and actually there's already a budget in place for that wall. So there is a routine, I think it's a yearly routine to inspect it and to repair it, but we'll also provide our services to our property department who looks after the wall to provide that traffic management, because again, that is a major expense to repairing that wall. It's not actually getting the guys out with the lime mortar and the replace. It's actually putting the TM. But we will support this. We are operational. We are depot-based guys, and there's nothing worse than giving a very nice project. What looks very fancy at the beginning, and then it's over to you to maintain. We have started this project very firmly in mind from the start to the end, and for its continued maintenance, we will look after it ourselves. We're not going to rely on KCC. We're not going to rely on Network Well. We're going to rely on ourselves and our own skills in our workforce to do that.
Thank you.
It's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for everyone's input on this. I think it's I beg your pardon. Yeah, go on, Councillor Pearl.
It was just a sort of random comment, really. I'm sort of slightly bemused about this sort of attempt to manufacture a sort of a faux Jurassic feeling of that end of town with Iggy the Iguanodon. I'm sure many people know this, but I'll just state it for the record. Iggy the Iguanodon, he or she, has no connection with that end of town. He or she was in fact found in a quarry just off Queen's Road in what is now Greenwich Close in the Free State of Bridgeward.
Sorry, it was the Spires.
No, it's about 10 yards up. It's Greenwich Close. We're discussing it on More Memories of Maidstone this morning, in fact.
It was on the corner where the house was. What used to have the a
It's still Bridgewater.
Very good. Isn't it nice to have such a good subject to warm the heartstrings, etc.? But it's just that. The only problem is it sets a precedent, because I want the Lewes Road done now. So, all right, then there we go. We start putting our bids in. Mr. Green was talking about some possible money, going forward. Okay. I mean, the best thing for me about this project is the value for money. I can't see how they're doing it within that budget. I think it's fantastic, and I think it ought to be encouraged, keeping it sort of in-house. If we need to use consultants or outside bodies for advice, so it be. But doing it in-house and using our own efforts and a conscious effort to do, because we're Maidstone people, and I think it's wonderful. So we're essentially asked to just to approve the three recommendations on the front page of 140. Are those in favour? That's unanimous, I think it will be. Thank you very much. Right, folks, before we go on to the next item, we're going to have a 5-minute break to set up and have a bit of a breather. Thank you. Okay, members, thank you very much. Thank you. Right, we'll start the meeting again on agenda item 17, the draft biodiversity strategy, and that's being presented by Jen Shepherd and Andrew Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Andrew Williams, Parks and Open Spaces Manager. I'm here to give you an introduction to the draft biodiversity strategy entitled Saving Nature in Maidstone.
Okay, sorry.
The iteration of the document before you is now in a strategic document form, whereas in the past we've had biodiversity action plan, which was formally adopted in 2011, but it was actually covering a period 2009 to 14. So now we have brought forward the strategy document. In its aims, it's very much more accessible, better graphics, content, aspiring to connect with a greater audience rather than just purely a specialist document. The approach is practical, pragmatic. There are ambitions to be more visionary and have a narrative in that, which is obviously being brought forward for discussion. The content is current, it's best practice, thoroughly researched and referenced for those that want to delve deeper into the subject matter. There's a comprehensive list of sources of advice and government best practice. Now, in introducing the document to you, you'll see there are various shades of grey, but it does follow a format where there are orange boxes for definitions and so on, and best advice and what is relevant to Maidstone. Our signpostings within the documents to lead you to other sources of information. There is a narrative in the beginning about the ecosystems, the current thinking on biodiversity, moving away from lots of action plans per habitat to a more holistic view of tackling the biodiversity issues. Not one habitat acts on its own, they are all interconnected, and in this approach we are moving towards that overarching strategy rather than individual action plans. We are concentrating on key areas of woodland, wetland, the urban setting, and the importance of agriculture and grasslands as well. I won't go on any further, but I'd be happy to be directed by the chairman.
Yep. Thank you very much, Andrew. I've got Councillor Kimmins. Did you want to come in first?
Yeah, it's not usual that you have a 71-page update given to you when you walk straight in, because I took the time to actually read this document, and then obviously I couldn't read this one because I've only got it when I walked in. So I was a little bit confused with that, and also there is a few confusing elements in the document. So I mean, I would like to take this away and read it again and be directed by the officers. So I'm proposing if we could defer and meet with the officer and discuss it a little bit more, because to me there's a lot to take in and I don't understand it all, I'm afraid, or it might just be me being a bit stupid. So, but anyway, that's my proposal. I propose for a deferment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Got Councillor Pearl seconded. Okay. Would you like to speak?
I'd just sort of like to sort of second some of what Councillor Kimmants there has said. You know, we've got 3 very impressive documents before us. The draft strategy itself, the response of the Climate Change and Biodiversity Working Party, which, whilst I'm a member of that working party, as are others on this side, I should stress 95% of the work, thought and care that's gone into that has come from Councillor Tony Harwood. Obviously the third document we've got is the response to that response, as it were. But I think to appraise those 3 documents properly and the level of detail that's been gone into there, I think we need a lot more time than this meeting.
Yes, I tend to agree with you both, Chair. I think we need, because it's so comprehensive, don't get me wrong, it's a really important document, and we ought to be waving it as a flag for Maidstone. It's so detailed. Sorry, certainly.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify about the update. Hands up, that's my fault. I uploaded the earlier version of the document as Appendix 1, and actually Andrew had been through it and taken out some of just the spurious comments and things that had gone in there that was just not quite right. So it's probably 90% the same document with small elements. So actually by reading the first one, you haven't lost the feel and what it's saying. There will just be little bits that we thought, actually, that's not quite clear. So just for clarity, I wanted to explain that.
Sorry, yes, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, but also I'd like to see in more detail the maps, because they're a little bit lost in translation there, because I look at that and I can work out where it is because I'm a cab driver, but you know, it's I can't see what it's actually doing, and I think really that either needs to be looked at on a computer or printed out in colour so it can you know, give it its proper clarity.
Yep, no, I certainly understand. I just wanted to clarify that it was my mistake for the urgent update, so apologies.
Yeah, going back to my thoughts again, in that essentially I think this should go to a workshop for all members to be involved, because we've had a working group and there's people outside. Saying that, what stage do we know? We're going to defer it. Are we going to defer it for a workshop? Are we going to defer it to have a workshop and then come back to this committee in January? Now, I'm quite, as you're probably aware, there is a time scale on this, and we agreed that it would be in place by April next year. And we all know how time slips by. So, Councillor Kimmants.
Well, as I was the original proposer, then I propose it to go, to be deferred, to go to a workshop so that we can attend, have it all explained, understand it, and then bring it back to committee.
Is that okay with Councillor Pearl? Okay then. Right, is everybody aware that we defer this item for tonight and we bring it back to a workshop with further references, and so we're all in January, yes. Okay, so everyone, that was, sorry, Councillor Kimmants proposed, Councillor Pearl seconded. Those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, folks, thank you very much. And that closes the meeting. Thank you. Sorry, folks, could you hold fire a minute?
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, just one tiny update. Last meeting, we had Ken Scott come to talk to us about the virtual dementia tour, and just to say that he has emailed, and I think he emailed you as well, John, just to say that he is kicking this off at Ashley Grove Care Centre on the 4th of February. He will start his virtual dementia tour.
Lovely.
Thank you.
That's super. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Thank you for your time.